anyway, Minister, thank you for being here. Over the last, he's going to fiddle with your microphone. Over the last few weeks, I've been, of course, doing my reading and research, reappraising myself with Jordan. I've come, obviously, many times to the country. I recall in 2012, before that, there were accusations leveled at the policymakers that there were no plans, that there was lots of activity, but that there wasn't any structure to it. Now, you, the policymakers, have very comprehensively, I believe, addressed that. In fact, as far as I understand, I counted 4 plans running from, 12 months to 24 months to 5 years to 30 years. How do these, how do these fit together, including this Jordan 2025, 2035? There's a 2035 one as well.
2025.
There's 2025, right? And what the Minister of Finance touched on it, but what I think I don't perhaps understand like I should is, what is the strategic vision for Jordan? We've got to move it away from somewhat dependency on grants to having a character of its own. Not a satellite economy. What should that be?
Well, thank you, Richard. It's a great pleasure to be with all of you today. And I think very much the story of Jordan is one that cannot be told in isolation of the geopolitical context we live in, obviously. And given where we're located, I think one has to benchmark Jordan in terms of its achievements, given all the constraints that have been imposed on it, and given the global citizenship role that Jordan does so well, and not just recently, but over the many decades. For Jordan, we've had a relatively, I would say in the 21st century, we've had a very aggressive reform growth path. We've tripled the per capita income, doubled the size of the economy, quadrupled our trade, and have done very well, I would say, from the year 2000 on. And we've even reached a phase where we were on average for almost 6-7 years growing at a real economic growth rate of 7%. And then things started to slow down, obviously, as happened with the entire world. 2008, the financial crisis, and then at the end of 2010, the beginning of the Arab Spring, and all what that has meant from a disruption point of view to any economy. Actually, what Jordan deserves to be commended on is that all bets would have been that any other country, even wealthier than Jordan, would have had a serious setback. And I think what is impressive about Jordan, with all, of course, no country has a perfect track record, is the continuous ability to sustain the resilience and this inherent capability in our Jordanian genetic code that I proudly say of always trying to turn challenges into opportunities. And to come back to your question, I think this is the story. So think of the perfect storm that hit Jordan in 2011 and 12. A country that all of a sudden is surrounded by conflict that erupts, loses its entire gas supply when we're a country that imports 96% of its energy, and the gas supplies from Egypt would power actually 90% or plus of our power plants. You have hundreds of thousands of refugees start to spill across the border, and you have a tremendous reduction in the growth rate because of a massive amount of uncertainty that surges. I think it's a great testament to the Jordanian government, private sector, civil society, their ability to have worked together, although not perfectly well, but to really forge always a path forward based on resilience and based on turning challenges into opportunities.
I totally take your point, and I think it's demonstrated almost by the fact that we haven't said very much about it, because it's unfair.
It's taken for granted that Jordan always manages crisis very well.
Let me just put it on record that we are, it's a deeply impressive track record of having managed a series of crises that were not of your making and the economy and the people and the social fabric of the country, all of these things, which, as you know, some people were very much pointing at, well, it's the next shoe to drop, you know, it can't not go, Jordan is going to go. Well, no, it's still a safe, secure environment that is growing, maybe not at the speed that it needs to. So, and as you say, we just take that for granted. Well, yeah, fine, sure. But no, but it's a major achievement. That said, I will still want to ask my first question.
And by the way, and that's not enough. Obviously, that's not our ambition. Our ambition is not to survive and to do.
Sure.
But I want to set the context correctly.
Absolutely.
When your energy bill reaches 22% of GDP, I mean, that's a major disruption. Very few countries would have survived that and still maintained the momentum positively forward.
Let me rephrase my question a little bit then, okay? I mean, if we take this and say that the first 8 years of the 21st century were you know, good years for pretty much everybody, and the second 8 years of the 21st century, take 2016, have not been good years.
Correct.
So we're not quite biblical, 7 years of famine and 7 years of plenty, but we're around that. My question really is, look, it's been a really rough 8 years for you. You survived that period remarkably well. What's next? So what's the third 8-year period of the 21st century going to bring for Jordan? And are we going to see the beginnings of an articulation of an economic vision for the country that, you know, takes into consideration both the first and the second?
Sure. Very much so. And this is really the segue into having the right roadmap. And the right roadmap for Jordan, which we built and launched last May 2015, almost a year ago, is the Jordan 2025. So the plan is you had this massive disruption. We actually had to quickly adapt as a country. We did a very strong IMF standby arrangement program, which concluded towards the end of last year.
Very successful.
And in that program, and it was successful, as Madame Lagarde has described it many times, and the program actually focused very quickly and based on the national reform program to maintain macroeconomic stability, get out to the extent of possible of the subsidies that were bleeding the economy, and especially fiscally. The oil products, I mean, Jordan was probably the first country in this region, and way ahead of the GCC and other countries, probably at the worst timing politically, that was bold and courageous enough to take the decision to remove subsidies on oil products, to start raising water and electricity prices, at least in a way to, on the water side, to recover the maintenance and operation cost, and electricity to set a system that would absorb the massive disruption that had occurred to the economy. We went aggressively then on a path to deal with our Achilles heel, which is the energy challenge, very aggressive energy diversification program, both renewable, oil shale, new water or a new gas terminal in Aqaba to start importing, which we did last May. We started, or June, we resumed the import of gas and so on. So we adapted. To build on that, we realized that then once we've reasserted our macroeconomic and fiscal stability and got back to a safe trajectory, we have to have a longer term vision. And we did the Jordan 2025. It was an exercise of 14 months, a very consultative, bottom-up approach where the government issued calls publicly to private sector, political parties, parliamentarians, NGOs, academia, business organizations, and so on. We looked at all the prior plans that have been partially implemented, partially shelved or not implemented, updated them, looked at the new realities, and put together through then a process that was very consultative, a new high-level vision and strategy for the next 10 years, intended to actually continue our strategic drivers, ensuring more prosperity, but at the same time strengthening our resilience, because we were not naive to assume that the regional circumstances are going to really get idealistic or better.
These problems are not going to disappear, and certainly things like
and the plan put very good targets over a 10-year period whether it's on debt to GDP coming down to under 60 by 2025, whether it's increasing the competitiveness of the economy, the fiscal deficit targets, unemployment, poverty, all your major developmental targets that a nation has to build into its national plan. This was made as a 10-year vision, with the way the government implements it, and the successive government is through our national medium-term plans, what we call the executive development programs.
Yes.
They're really rolling 3-year plans that get updated annually, and we're deliberate about this approach because you can't set a 10-year plan in this type of a neighborhood and assume everything is going to go well.
No.
You have to adapt and update the plan on an annual basis to try to see, are you moving closer to the targets away, and what do you need to overcompensate for as you roll this plan successively over the next 10 years?
Yeah. Minister, I think what I'm trying to get to is, and I know this is almost an impossible question to answer, but I'm going to ask it anyway. If you could describe in a few sentences what you see Jordan as being like in 2025, let's assume that the majority of the goals are hit. What sort of country is it going to be? I mean, and the reason, I'm slightly leading this question, and the reason I'm doing that is that, we are here today to look at, yes, the financial stuff, the normal things that Euromoney does, but particularly the role of innovation and small innovative companies, and what our core constituency, which is the financial sector, should be doing in the development of new businesses, of new private sector companies. What I'm trying to get to, I think, is what is the role for entrepreneurship and innovation in this 2025? Yes, you need to have the macroeconomic conditions right. Yes, you need to sort out the labor market. Yes, you've got to have the energy. But those are all reasons to do something else. And what is the something else? That's what I'm asking.
Very good. And I was leading to that.
Oh, good. Okay, so we're on the same page.
But I was setting the macro framework first. And within this 10-year vision, it's very much, the objective is to build a more diversified economy that is based on competitiveness, that is really focused on 9 clusters that are inherent competitively to our economy. These clusters are things related to ICT and business process outsourcing, to the healthcare sector, where Jordan is the 5th in the world in terms of health or medical tourism, and the 1st in the Arab region. Education and educational services, where Jordan remains relatively a good center of excellence at the regional level in terms of its ability to produce talented human resources, although we've had few setbacks that we are very much working on to fix and recalibrate through the National Human Resource Development Royal Commission that is looking at updating the entire educational system to the 21st century reality and to catch up with the areas where we have fell behind. Other sectors are things like pharmaceuticals as a cluster, the agri-industries as another cluster, tourism and hospitality as another, construction, engineering and consulting services, and financial services and so on. So the economy is very much a service-oriented economy, export-led, quite diversified, builds on our unique competitive advantage, which is our people, our human resources, and our ability to continuously invest in them. And we see Jordan as doing even a more competitive positioning of what it has always been, one of the regional hubs and gateways, not the regional hub and gateway, within the location we're in. And sorry, one last cluster I think I slipped to mention was transport and logistics. So these are the clusters we're looking at, with Jordan actually being a strong base for free trade manufacturing or an outsourcing center, a hub for ICT and innovation and entrepreneurship within the Arab region, within the Arab context, a transport and logistical gateway, as well as a base to do projects, construction, especially reconstruction opportunities that hopefully will be coming out after all this negative news destruction
Yes.
and situation. And Jordan has done well in these areas,
Yeah.
and there's great promising potential going
Well,
forward that we will use these competitive advantages.
Peace would be a blessing on so many different levels, but not least in the reconstruction opportunities that would come from it. But so, I mean, if I said that the vision is to be an export-led service economy, you touched on it, I think, but you view your market as the region, the wider region, so the Arab world, the GCC, maybe up into little parts of Central Asia and Turkey. Is that where you see your customers?
It's actually multiple concentric circles. Jordan cannot afford just to focus on one area.
Sure.
For example, you know that the MENA region is the worst region in the world in intra-regional trade.
It's appalling.
But Jordan has probably the highest proportion of trade within the region. Jordan has an incredible export of human resources into the region. But at the same time, and this has been part of the risk and vulnerability, in essence, of Jordan, where we've seen lower growth and lesser exports, because we've done the right thing, which is to integrate within your wider region and to try to lead within our region. So it does move into becoming an economic bloc, because that's what the globe is doing, and every other region. However, having said that, very much I also mentioned the need to integrate Jordan within the unique FTAs we have. Jordan is probably second to none in the region in terms of the FTA potential, with the US, Canada, the EU, all of the Arab countries and the Greater Arab Free Trade Agreement, Singapore, Turkey, and many more FTAs being negotiated, whether it's with Mexico, Central Asia, the Euro-Asia Economic Bloc. We just started the process to also open these markets through an FTA, and so on. And finally, I think within the so there's the global concentric circle focusing on the FTAs that we're doing. There's the regional circle, and there's the near neighborhood, or the near and in the region circle, which is very much an output of what we're trying to do with London. And the Euro-Mediterranean process is to actually look at ways to further integrate Jordan into the European Union through the advantage we have secured, given the burdens we have been absorbing, which is a much simplified rules of origin with Brussels and the European Union to help Jordan integrate further.
I mean, I think it's a wonderful initiative, and something that we, despite the fact that I'm British and we may not be in the EU after the 23rd of the 23rd of June. I sincerely hope we are. Otherwise, we'll have to be called not Euromoney or something like that. And
go to the back of the queue for the new FTAs.
Oh, it's crazy. Anyway, never mind about that. We got our own problems. We need to deal with them. But how are the Europeans responding? The EU responding to that? I mean, it seems like such a good idea. It seems like a great win-win way of working with Jordan to manage some of the problems that Europe is facing in terms of movement of people, but also give you some much-deserved upside. Are they talking sensibly to you?
Well, yes, they are. I mean, obviously, Jordan's vision in the medium-long term is to very much, have a much higher proportion focus in terms of its development on trade and investment, and lesser on aid. And I think the aid issue, if you look at the budget in this year, it's close to $11+ billion, the central government budget. But you look at the grant components, it's about $1 billion+. So it's a ratio of 1 to 11. It's not that high. So Jordan's dependency has been relatively not bad.
But it's on that margin. I mean, the thing is, it's that margin. It's the budget deficit.
But you see, within our range, we're very much focused. I think the disruption that happens, these massive spillovers, because Jordan keeps its borders open, because Jordan does the right and decent thing politically in terms of opening its country to refugees, where we have over 2.8 million registered refugees historically now in Jordan, and makes us actually the #1 country per capita to have done that. But we have wisely also turned these challenges into opportunities for our country. It's very much that notion that has enabled Jordan to request these advantages and to be granted these advantages with great consensus, where people actually give credit to Jordan for what it's doing, and so on. So the agreement is going relatively well with the European Union. Brussels is a bureaucracy. It's not easy to negotiate. You're negotiating with an entity that then has to coordinate with 28 countries. We've made tremendous progress. We're still targeting, hopefully, the June-July to have this concluded, where we're looking at over probably 10 to 12 development industrial zones and regions to qualify as areas that can use the simplified rules of origin.
Yep.
The rules of origin are very much, Brussels is offering Jordan what they offer low-income countries, like in sub-Saharan Africa.
Yes.
Basically, the generalized system of preference where Jordanian manufacturers or manufacturers and investors in Jordan are allowed to get up to 70% of the inputs to be non-originating from Jordan.
Yeah.
It's almost a flip of saying 30% value add, and no need for a double substantial transformation. We have wide lists of products that actually open the door tremendously to increase the potential of Jordan integrating into the supply chains of Europe, very much looking at Jordan as Europe, West Europe looked at East Europe 25 years ago.
It's interesting you say that.
As a base that could lower cost of production, be a base for reconstruction potential in the future, but also in the short term, provide profit incentive, CSR opportunities by global corporates to actually do something positive, not only for their bottom line and profits, but also to help with the burden of the refugees and so on in Jordan.
I mean, this is the window of opportunity, because I think Europe has finally woken up to the fact that, I hate the expression, but the Middle East is on its doorstep. It's not some place over there which you don't need to worry about.
There's been a rude awakening with the migration crisis.
Well, I mean, it's, you know, it's awful that you need that scale of human tragedy, but suddenly there is a discussion within Europe and within the UK and elsewhere. You know, I've been covering the region for 20 years, so I've been saying, you know, it's not that far away, you know, you need to think about it. But that this is a strategically important, politically important area that impacts what happens in Europe. So I think the opportunity is there. I'm going to ask you the same question to close, because unfortunately we could go on. I mean, I could talk all morning to you about this. This is great, but I do have to. I have a clock. I'm being looked at the back. I know we have keynote speeches and other people who want to get on the stage. So, final question is, again, if you could change one thing about Jordan, magic, whatever, that would, you think, make a real difference to growth and jobs, what would it be?
I think to a largest extent is to refocus strongly on revamping education and look through the lens of competitiveness on our economy. I mean, these are very critical. Stay the course, implement the Jordan 2025, obviously adapted to the circumstances that are disruptive from year on to the other year. I think if we go along that path, whether this government or the next government, listen, this is a country that has done well, has not used the regional circumstances as an excuse to stop reforms. In the next 12 to 14 months, we have 3 elections that are coming up. The next 18th parliament, municipal elections, which Jordan has been holding since 1925. Decentralized elections, the first time to be held in Jordan at the governorate level or the regions, which is a push to increase the citizen participation and the concept and the vision of His Majesty for active citizenship, whether it's empowering citizens, youth and women with educational skills, with voting rights, with the ability to influence, you know, the priorities and how we move forward, being much more inclusive in our approach, very much implement the Jordan 2025 realistically, adapt it, and stick to the the reform pillars within that plan, and see the course through. See it through. I think I'm optimistic. 2015, we started the first quarter at 2.0 real growth. The fourth quarter, we reached 2.6. We're hopefully trying to push to get to the 3% this year. Next year, build and move it closer to 4. This is in spite of a very difficult regional situation. And a government that should remain committed to continuously improving the economy and having a real and effective public partnership with the private sector and civil society moving forward.
Thank you. It's more than one thing, but your passion is evident, which is the important thing. Minister, thank you very, very much for joining us this morning. Fascinating. We support fully what we do and hope that we can play a small role in helping realize that vision. Please join me in thanking His Excellency.